Hey, Shaun. Can you hear me?
Hey, hey, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah,
So,
I wasn't sure if you were supposed to send me an invite or I was inviting you, so my
I was
bad.
trying, but the delay on it. It tends to happen. So, I appreciate you taking the time. For those that are just joining us on both sides, real quick, I'll just talk a little bit about what this conversation's about, and then we'll kind of just dive into it. But the hashtag candidate conversations you can use when you're talking about these conversations. You can use when you're sharing these videos. But as I talked about before in some of the previous videos, we have a lot of politicians that we know aren't good enough, and we have a lot of awesome, passionate, promising candidates out there across the country, both small, local, state, and federal. And at the end of the day, this conversation is about really just getting their ideas out there, figuring out what your policy ideas are, what you would do if you were in a position of power, and how we could actually solve some of these problems. So, for anybody on your side who doesn't know me, obviously I'm Mr. Earth Rebirth, aka Andrew. I've run the organization Earth Rebirth for the last 13 years. We focus on educating and empowering people to take food, energy, and water into their own hands. It was started in Oklahoma. We've set up over 150 different community garden projects across the Midwest, mostly in Oklahoma. But again, the main idea is really helping people take those three things that we all need to survive and empowering us so we can all have them sustainably, whether it's on an individual family level or in our entire community. So I know you guys have some definite issues that relate to that at this point. So if you want to just jump in a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you've decided to get into running for office.
Yeah, sure. First, I just want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate your patience with scheduling and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm Shaun McInnish is my name. I'm running as a independent candidate for governor of Mississippi in 2023. A lot of why I decided to run was just kind of like what you said. Is I feel like we have a lot of politicians, and it's not just state. It's city, it's county. It's We have a lot of elected officials in Mississippi that I just we kind of feel like they've kind of lost their reason. Why they were elected in the first place, which was to represent voters. A lot of things that I push for are things that I've personally experienced myself and my children have experienced. Let's just say that the system has kind of let down a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, even myself. So a lot of it, is just a frustration, I guess, with the status quo, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, as you know, Mississippi's pretty much last or close to last in just about every category there is. I mean, whether it's infrastructure or healthcare or anything like that. And it's sad, for me, it's a beautiful state. There's a lot of good people here. Um, and I just don't feel like I'm not saying all, but I don't feel like some of the elected officials that we have is really they're not the right people to represent us, and they're not looking out for our best interests. So
Yeah,
that's what
for
it's all
sure.
about.
Awesome. Have you ever run for office or served anywhere before?
I have not, and y'all gonna hear a train running by too. I live close to train tracks, so just doesn't. I'm used to it, but y'all might
Right.
be. No, I haven't. And, the step, you would think, well, why would somebody just go straight to the top state office, in the state as their first run? But I just felt like, some things you just feel like, it's your calling, so to speak. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like the governor is, it's hard to explain, but I kind of feel like the governor kind of sets the tone for the rest of the state officials and even city and county officials.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's probably not honestly in Mississippi, and it may be like this in other states. The lieutenant governor is probably the most powerful political position in the state of
Right.
Mississippi, and if it's not that, it's Speaker of the House. But I, the governor, like I said, I feel plays a really important role with setting the tone as when we're talking about anything from funding to policies to helping out cities like Jackson, for instance. And I just kind of felt like that was my calling, and it is a big step. I'm aware of that. I am not I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a full time plumber, is what I am, and have
Nice.
been for 20 years. So, and that's kind of a lot of what I can relate to with I'm a plumber, and I'm also a plumber of 20 years in the Jackson metropolitan area. So
Right.
I've seen firsthand a lot of how the problems that Jackson's has affected, and it's not just Jackson. I will tell you. I mean, I'm sure you know that, but we have a
Hmm.
lot of infrastructure problems. Again, last place
Yeah.
in infrastructure, and I constantly work on water leaks and sewer breaks and gas line leaks and hey, sweet pea, how are you? But in that regard, I felt like plumbing experience and contracting experience and having that experience at least. I felt like even running as governor with that background still kind of would be an advantage. Um,
Yeah. So when
and
it comes to the Jackson water crisis, if you want to jump in on that a little bit, especially with your experience over the last 20 years, a lot of people who aren't familiar with Mississippi are like, how could something like this happen? And one of the big things I think a lot of people who are more informed is, well, it was pretty well known that this system needed some infrastructure repair, and it's just been neglected for a long time. In your mind, I think there was 4 or 5 water boil advisories just since June, and there's obviously been much more over the last recent years. Where do you think the biggest failure is not addressing that? Obviously, when we posted that first or second video about this conversation, there was a big debate in the comments about it's the mayor, it's the governor. Where do you think a lot of the burden of blame is, at least right now, with this issue?
uh, you know, again, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and I will say up front, I think there's been failures and things going wrong with the city government of Jackson, and I also think there's been failures and things going wrong with the state government in the way that they've responded to helping Jackson, because there's multiple cases of the city, and I'm talking about over the last 25 years,
Right.
the city of Jackson has asked state legislatures and governors and past governors and for funding, and they didn't get it. And they've asked
Right.
for increasing, like I saw you made a video about the 1% increase. It was vetoed. Um,
Right.
so, in my mind, I would say it's a balance issue. I would say
Right.
it's 50-50. That's what I'm going to say. And the reason why I say that is, yes, the city legally is responsible, for keeping up their infrastructure. But you got to also look at the facts. And Jackson's had a drastic population decrease.
Yeah.
Tax revenue has drastically decreased. Um, I think the median household income has dropped just in the last 20 years. I think it's dropped. I have the numbers here, but it's dropped something like $12,000 or something like that, a decrease.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah, I
not,
think I remember seeing somewhere that it was like 46, $47,000, and the national is like 65. So it's quite a discrepancy.
correct. And they've had, if you look into Jackson, a couple of years ago, they had a thing that hurt them a lot. It was a deal with Siemens, and it was this
Mm.
deal with Siemens coming in, and they're going to replace all the water meters, and they did. And I know of this firsthand because I got countless calls from people calling plumbers saying my water bill was. I've actually seen water bills for $25,000, for $30,000 for 1 month. And there's no way,
Wow.
like, and I've communicated with members of, with people that work at Jackson that are over water and sewer, and I try to tell them, look, that even if every line in your house was leaking water, you couldn't have a $25,000 water bill in a month. There's no way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not even possible. And they had issues with that Siemens deal, and they installed they replaced every water meter in the city of Jackson with this water meter. The water meters ended up being faulty. I don't know if it was a
Mm.
manufacturing problem, but anyway, they had to remove every single water meter. The city ended up suing Siemens. It was just crazy. But because of all that, you're also having problems with, like I said, a lot of it's just revenue problems. I don't think
Right.
Jackson. I think the last number I've heard was like there's like $3.8 million in outstanding water bills that have not been paid,
Wow.
and that's a lot of revenue. And that's revenue that's supposed to go toward these water pumps and water line upgrades and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a
Well,
lot of
and I
issues
know
there.
I just saw. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know I just saw that. I think the mayor just said the estimated cost to fix this at this point is close to $2 billion, and the new state funding they have is for infrastructure is just about 75 million. So, in your mind, like if you were governor right now, where exactly do you find those resources? Do you have to go to the federal government and try and get them to prioritize retrofitting these systems across the South, not just Mississippi more? Because, like we said, this isn't just Mississippi. While it's really severe there's a lot of states that are dealing with this issue, and not just in the South either. But how do we appropriate that sort of discrepancy of funding when it's so big of a price tag to fix a problem that was neglected for so long?
Right, and that's that's the question of the year.
Yeah,
I think and I think you're going to see. There's already been some federal money involved, and because there's FEMA officials here and all that, they're
yeah,
still here at the water plants, and EPA's here and all that. And I think everybody's trying to come up with a plan. A lot of that is like this is just an example. Earlier this year, our current governor and in the legislature, they passed a significant income tax cut for the state of Mississippi, the largest in the state's history. Now, the
right,
reason why that's important is it sounds great, you know, but it reduced our revenue for this state for, I want to say, $535 million less revenue.
right,
So there's some challenges there as far as what I don't like about it uh, is they reduced the revenue by that much, but they didn't come up with an alternative to replace that revenue, so to speak. So that revenue right
right.
now is just gone. So there's things where we're looking at. Um, I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot of plans on that. We're gonna have to find ways to increase revenue because it ain't it's complicated because it's not just water. I know water's getting all the attentions, but it's also
Right.
roads. The roads in Jackson are so bad that I mean they'll knock your front end out of alignment. I mean it's literally like
Yeah.
it's um and in my mind, I think, well, the road's got to be replaced anyway. So you dig out the road, you dig down, you fix the water and sewer lines, you replace them, and then you put a new road back. But we've got to find ways of increasing revenue. A lot of mine
Yeah.
is going to be, I can't say the full word, but I'll just say it's going to be, I'm a big proponent of legalization and decriminalization. I
Yeah.
believe that the future toward like Mississippi, our two biggest deficits are infrastructure and also education. And I think
Yeah.
that's our current this is another number. Current public education fund in Mississippi is underfunded $373 million right now, like as of today. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, coming from Oklahoma, I don't totally identify with that, and it's a solution. It is one. I mean, Oklahoma schools were desperate when we finally decided to medically pass, and so the fact that once we did that, it was a game changer. It allowed us to create tax revenue in ways that the state, not only with their good, better, best projections, they just exceeded at every level. But
Right.
it's a simple thing. The states that have done it at this point, that tax revenue is really essential. And when we talk about again that $2 billion price tag of fixing the infrastructure just for the water system, you mentioned $535 million tax break. That's a quarter of that price tag. You couple that with people taking advantage of the tax system or the welfare system, and we can dive into the Brett Favre conversation a little bit here and there. But at the end of the day, yeah, you have to make that money up somewhere. And at the end of the
Correct.
day, decriminal the we not only as we've seen across the South, not making that money from the tax revenue, but wasting tax revenue, criminalizing it. And so it's a really good solution that, I'm glad Oklahoma was very surprised that they jumped so early on board with medical, but they should move to recreational as fast as possible, and so should the other states. So,
I should. I've studied. I've been watching a lot of Oklahoma. I've been reading a lot about Colorado's system because they were some of the first ones to do all this, and
mhm,
that's a benefit for us in a way because we're able to kind of look and see what worked, what didn't work. Because some of the things Colorado did at first didn't work out too well, and some of the
right.
things Oklahoma did probably didn't work out. But they would kind of work the kinks out of the system. But yes, I think that's a lot of it. I know it sounds silly, but that's a lot of
Yeah, it's legitimate, and especially I'd say one of the best things Oklahoma did in comparisons to states like Oregon or maybe California is the permitting system, and it did work both ways, But at the end of the day, you essentially had to pay $2,500 for a permit to grow or sell, and so no matter how much land you had, that permit stayed the same price, but it allowed a lot of really small fish to get into the process of the medical industry really early on.
right.
Versus in California, it can cost upwards of $100,000 just to have a grow permit now, and for an acre, couple acres, and it doesn't matter how much land you own in Oklahoma, you can grow as much as you want with following grow regulations. But that permitting process became very accessible for average citizens, which allowed the tax space to explode really quickly. And I don't think they anticipated how well that would work. Now, obviously, there's the backside of corporations coming in and trying to buy up land and do all kinds of stuff where they can kind of make their way into the industry and just profit as much as possible. But it protecting those small growers and allowing the citizens, especially in a state like Mississippi, where the median income is so low, allowing them to get into the ground floor of that industry isn't just a new tax revenue. It's an entire entrepreneurial and job base that you can now build off of. That's thousands and thousands of jobs for those people. So it's a great opportunity for a state like Mississippi and Georgia and Louisiana and Alabama and all of those states that are all, in the bottom 10, 15 of education, healthcare, infrastructure, and just being able to
Correct.
afford those basic things. So,
And we need the. I mean, we need the money, and there's other things out there that I'm interested in doing that'll help the state and even generate more money. You can read the numbers like Medicaid expansion, for instance.
right.
Uh, we will literally make if we accepted Medicaid expansion in the state. I think we wouldn't lose. It wouldn't cost us any money. We would make money off of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a no brainer, and it would increase coverage to 35,000 people on day one, and you know what I mean.
Right.
There's a
And,
there's a lot of
it's,
done.
yeah, absolutely. And, it's really tough, when in those, I grew up, I was born in Texas, raised in Georgia before I went to college in Oklahoma. So I've kind of just bounced around a lot of the South for the first 25, 30 years of my life. But I think the hardest part is, the average person out there has a really a really verified distrust of government and politicians. On both sides, they have just been manipulated and gaslit in a lot of different ways. And it becomes really hard to really help people see through the weeds of who's actually there representing them and who's just saying they want to do something to help them. And especially in those states, one of the things I talk about a lot with, conservative friends or family is I understand why it's so frustrating to even try and trust the Democratic Party because, the Republican Party kind of took off the mask years ago. They say what they mean. They've been saying they were going to take Roe v. Wade away. They say they want to cut funding on certain things, and they do it. Democrats say they want to protect it and expand it, and they never really do it in an adequate way that the average person feels that protection. And so it almost feels like they're lied to. And at the end of the day, if you're hanging out in middle school and you just don't know who to trust, you might be able to look at the bully and know, yeah, I don't trust that person, but you go insane thinking this
Right.
person's your friend and they're never doing anything for your interest. So,
Right.
if you were to win office today, you talk about you have a lot of ideas. What's just your one or two big dream policies that if you had no obstruction, nobody's going to mess with you, and you just got to, with a wand, you knew it would help the average person? What would you pass? Do you think it would help your family and your friends?
I mean, I think it's the two I just mentioned. It's the
Yeah.
Medicaid expansion. I really have a plan for pretty much full healthcare reform because I've had members of my family and good friends that have passed away and because they couldn't afford to get the treatment they needed. I in the infrastructure. I think that it sounds silly when you're one of your number one goals you would want uh, clean, safe drinking water, but I mean it's true. And what's happening in
Mm-hmm.
Jackson is really, like I said, I live in Rankin County, which is one county over from Hines County. Jackson's in Hines County, but we don't drink the water at our house. I mean, it's not safe to drink, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not on the news every day. I know, but it's not. I mean, we drink Kentwood bottled water. Our water smells like chlorine and chemicals. I
Mm.
mean, it's bad, and I worry about that. I've got four children. Um, I mean, those are things that I really think. I guess like what I'm saying is that I want everybody to have safe infrastructure where they can have safe water, and I want everybody to have healthcare options. You know what I mean? The option shouldn't be, well, just if you get sick enough, go to the emergency room, and you'll rack up $100,000 bill you can't ever pay. Those aren't
Right.
options.
Yeah. So,
Um,
I know there was that video. Well, in my video, I mentioned that the governor, clearly was trying to put the blame a lot on the mayor and went back and forth. But he said, "I'm open to all options," and then he mentioned
private
privatization
sector,
specifically. So, there's a million reasons that I'd be against privatizing the water system. One of the simple stats that I know just on average is that any privatized water system is about 59 to 65% more costly on the citizens. And
correct.
at the end of the day, when it comes to something that you basically need to survive, like there's no reason we should be putting this in the hands of corporations. Period. We've never seen that work out. And
Correct.
there's basic things that I think we just have to guarantee, and there still seems to be this giant push as we've watched government cut funding for these things and not prioritize them, and because they haven't been prioritized, people seem to accelerate the other way. Like, well, maybe corporations would do it better. And so, what are
Right.
your thoughts on that? How do you convince the average person who's kind of being sold by this idea that, well, the government's not doing it well, why would a corporation be any worse?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this, for me, from what I've seen over the years, I feel like, and I think most Jackson City leaders would agree with me, uh, we all kind of feel like that this is just a push to try to take something away from the city of Jackson. Because once
Mm-hmm.
they privatize it, that's no more revenue off of that from the city of Jackson. I mean, it's over. Jackson won't be able to come in. Say there is another water outage after that, or a boil water notice, even after privatization. The city of Jackson, I mean, their hands will be tied at that point.
Right.
But we kind of feel like that's just a push to just take something from Jackson. It's sad to say that they've there's been Jackson's also over our airport, our local airport, and the state has tried multiple times recently,
Mm-hmm.
even to take that away from Jackson. And well, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't I don't feel like that uh, taking any kind. You know what I mean? I the way I think of it is who think of it like as your kids, somebody babysitting your kids. Do you want somebody you've known, most of your life or all your life taking care of your kids, or do you just want some guy from northern Alaska you never met in your life taking care of your kids? Well, I'd want somebody I know because I'd feel a little more comfortable. Will things still possibly go wrong? Yeah, things could go wrong, but the same thing with the water. I just don't feel like I feel like an outsider like that would be more interested in profits than they would in the whole thing. And then you also got to think about what you mentioned is the cost part of it. I mean, we're talking
Hmm.
about, let's see, I'll give you some numbers here, but roughly 1 in 4 residents live in poverty. Average household income in Jackson is $25,000 and as low as 15,000 in some houses. All right. So
Wow.
you're talking about a $200 water bill or 250 because I think the average water bill price right now is about $100 is what I'm hearing. And that's what
Yeah.
my I'm not in Jackson, but mine's $100 a month.
Right.
Uh, how will that affect people that are already struggling? One of and I can say this firsthand because I'm not rich, I'm not a billionaire, I'm not a millionaire, I'm not any of these things, and we've struggled. My family has struggled with inflation. We all know what inflation is right now. Our state leaders have not done. Our current state leaders have not done anything to help anybody in any way with inflation.
Yeah.
Like uh, pausing a gas tax. Several states that did that just to help. I know it's
Hmm.
dropped back down now, but I'm talking about when it was $5 a gallon or whatever. Some states
Yeah.
did that. Some states have done stimulus payments, whatever. I mean, what I'm getting at is some states have tried to help their citizens during these tough times. Mississippi, for instance, has the highest. I think it's got the highest grocery tax in the whole country. We have a seven
Mm.
percent sales tax on groceries. A lot of states don't even have a grocery tax.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think even if they privatize, the water quality improves, the prices doubles or triples, and nobody can afford it. Then what good does it do? How good the water quality is? You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's the
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you said, when if somebody's going to watch your kid, you don't want the person watch your kid just trying to make as much money as possible off of that process. Like the priority should be making sure they watch your kid adequately, not cut the
right.
cost of watching your kid as much as they possibly can, especially when we've messed up the system and we're trying to repair it. So,
And the other tricky question amongst all this, which we probably already know the answer is, but if they do decide to privatize and they get all these contractors and investment groups or whatever involved, who's going to be making those decisions? Is it going to be
hmm,
Tate Reeves' best friend that's going to get the contract? We don't know, but I mean, those are things to think about.
yeah,
So,
for sure. So, when it comes to corporations and stuff, I know Mississippi's obviously a big agriculture state. A lot of those states right there along the Gulf are, and agriculture runoff is already a big problem. Pretty sure Mississippi River, if I remember right, it's in the top 10. I think it was like fifth or sixth most endangered river in the country right now. And it's because of agriculture runoff, which we've known as a problem for a long time. I've been out of college for 8 or 9 years now, and it was a big issue, the dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico and how they were just continuously growing. And so this is an issue that we've known about for at least 2, 3 decades and really haven't done much to actually adequately address. How again how do you address something like that in a state that has, put so much investment into those corporations to build their agriculture system at this point? I know there's some states have issues with when you try to threaten certain corporations like that with legislation, they just threaten leaving. And with a state that's so poor and needs to raise that money, how do you adequately hold those companies accountable or fix that problem?
yeah, that's like I said, again, there's a lot of steps involved in that. Like one of the, I know you talk about the Mississippi River, but one of the biggest problems that we have is in the Mississippi Delta, and there's Yazoo County, and they have it's a lot of agriculture area, a lot of
Hmm.
farmland, like thousands and thousands of acres, and there's been a argument, so to speak, over the last probably 40 years about installing backwater pumps in this area because it's an area that floods a lot, and when it
Hmm.
floods, it significantly reduces a lot of our agricultural production. Um, anyway, and they haven't really made any. That's just kind of been a back and forth and back and forth. I,
Right.
know. What'd you say it was? What was the term used on the Mississippi River?
The agriculture runoff.
Runoff. I don't know a
Yeah.
lot about.
Yeah, but so for those who don't know, yeah, my degree is sustainability, so I can talk a little bit about these issues here and there. But it's one of the leading causes of water pollution across the entire United States. And the issue most of the time is the difference between point source and non-point source pollution. And so, non-point source is a lot of these practices that you don't know the specific one. There's not one simple pipe, obviously, that is obvious the sole source of pollution all the time. When it
Okay.
comes to a system that's kind of built across an entire delta, you know there's pollution, there's excess use of certain agriculture, pesticides. All of those things kind of collectively create this problem that then create the dead zones in the Gulf and things like that. But it's not like you can just always look at one company and say you're responsible. Similar to with our conversation about the infrastructure issue, it's not just state or local. It's often a mixture of both. And
Right.
the issue, I think, is that at the end of the day, it's largely you can point to it's the corporations at large that are running the agriculture systems that are cutting those corners, excessively using pesticides we know that are not good for us. But because at the end of the day, we know the average farmer is not just your mom and pop farmer anymore in the 21st century. They're farmers that are indebted to some major company or agriculture supplier. And so whether it's livestock, chickens, pigs, their uh, waste is a huge agriculture runoff problem. Like I said, pesticides are a big one. But how do you collectively rein in a problem that, again, has just kind of been accepted at this point? Well, we need the food. We're going to do these things. And we're at the same time, again, creating costs that we're going to have to address later on. I don't remember the numbers right now, but I do think, if I remember right, the square miles of the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is larger than the state of New York at this point, and it might
Wow.
be bigger, well, way bigger than that at this point. But and anybody in the comments, feel free to fact check or look that up and drop which state it's bigger than. But it's a big issue, and it just kind of gets looked over because, again, we need food. And as somebody who's grown focused on localizing food resources a lot, I think a big portion of that solution in my mind is, again, empowering people to be a part of that production as consumers. I think there is a huge, huge opportunity for us to take back, food production, water quality, and energy production, and turn these into things that aren't just bills we have to pay as individuals, but things that we can adequately be a part of producing. But that is a different frame of mind we have to teach people to think of when we have a system that is traditional farming for 200, 300 years that then has just been taken over by corporations. So that was a long kind of ramble about agriculture runoff in general, but it comes down to really corporate agriculture runoff and how you rein something in like that without them just pulling away the existing revenue they have given to the state to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to read more about agriculture. That's something I
And we
hadn't.
can always do we can always do a second conversation more on food access and food quality. This is obviously, as you mentioned, right now Mississippi's pretty viral for the water crisis in Jackson, but there's a
Let's do.
lot of different issues that we can definitely talk about when it comes to the state as a whole. So
Yeah, let's do that. I don't want to. You know what I mean. I don't want to say I don't know what I'm talking about, but I don't know. But probably
so
said it's another issue Mississippi has that needs to be addressed for sure. I mean,
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about one of the buzz topics of Mississippi right now. Obviously, is Brett Favre. Everybody's super excited. Just dive into that one. I don't know if you want to give a little bit of context to anybody who doesn't know what's happened, and kind of where that money was, where it came from, what he was trying to do with it, anything like that. You are you familiar with that the storyline?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't
Yeah.
know it, but so basically, far and the numbers have changed. They've recently increased. I think we're up to
Mm-hmm.
$77 million
Mm-hmm.
misspent that we know of, and it could go higher. But it
Yeah.
was TANF money, with TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. I have some numbers here too. But anyway, that money's supposed to go to low income homes. Let's see. I had a little chart for this. Anyway, and I think the approval rate. I wish I could find my numbers. The approval rate was the amount of people that applied for TANF funds and that actually received TANF funds. I think it was like 6%.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah. And meanwhile, while that was happening, and there's others involved, Brett Favre sticks out, I think, a lot because he's so famous.
Right.
First, it started with a school, and it was called the New Summit School. And
Mm,
it's Tate Reeves involved some. He filmed one of his campaign videos in front of the school while all this was ongoing. He was
interesting.
he wasn't governor at the time, but he was lieutenant governor, and he was next in line. All right.
Right.
Anyway, the two main people of this New Summit School, have been, and they've already been indicted. They're in jail. They're facing charges and all that kind of stuff there. Anyway, their names are Nancy New and Zach New.
Mm,
Uh, so they set up this system basically where the school it was a school, but it was kind of a front for misappropriating funds.
interesting.
Um, anyway, and yeah, the TANF's supposed to be used to pay power bills. Yeah, yes, and it is hard to get approved for. Anyway, so they started doing these things. I think one of the first things came out, they were paying their family members $400,000 a year to be a janitor and stuff like that. And,
Right.
but anyway, a lot of what involves Brett Favre is at first it was, and that's what's changed. That's what I'm saying. The amounts changed for a while. For like the last year, it's been 3.5 million that was given to Brett Favre. Now we're up to 5 million. All right,
Mm,
but basically he was given taxpayer dollars uh, to make some speeches. I think one was in Tupelo. They were supposed to be motivational speeches, from what I'm understanding. Uh,
uh,
Fact that he didn't make the speeches ever. He took the money, but he didn't make the speeches. But then the 3.5 million comes in. He was given, and it was directed to build a new volleyball stadium at University of Southern Mississippi. Now, University of Southern Mississippi is important for like three big reasons. One, he's an alumni of University of Southern Miss. Two, his daughter at the time, this has recently changed like in the last 3 weeks, but his daughter
mm,
at the time played volleyball for the University of Southern Miss. And if you look at the University of Southern Mississippi's big board of directors, I think all combined they contributed like $180,000 to the Tate Reeves campaign,
mm,
who's our current governor. Um, I I do know that Brett Favre has. I think when he was originally approached about this a year and a half, 2 years ago, he paid some of the money back, um, but not all of it. I think there's some
mm.
interest charges and things like that. Uh, and I can't talk too much because a lot of this is pending,
Right.
alleged. Uh,
I know there was text that came out where he was really worried about this getting out to the media about him getting this money. So it's very clear he at least knew the wrongdoing that was there with what he was about to do and
Yeah, I
getting
had a
this
comment
funding.
about that. Like, no, he didn't do nothing. I'm like, well, why would anybody write? I mean, I'm serious. Like, why would you write? Is the media going to find out about this if you didn't kind of have the suspicion that you might be doing something wrong? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot involved to it. I think the case is actually, me personally, I think the case is bigger than what has been revealed so far. I
Yeah.
think there's a real good lady to follow, a news reporter. Her name is Anna Wolf. She works for Mississippi Today, uh, especially on Twitter. It's the best place to follow her. But she's steadily going through these text messages. We're talking about a log of text messages with, you know, a million text messages in them. And she's going through them one by one. But as she finds stuff each day, she's releasing it. I did hear yesterday that the state uh, um, has stopped her from getting any text messages until
Mm,
it's settled in court. So
wow.
there's a lot of,
Interesting.
yeah, a lot of unknowns there, but 77 million. Even if you're talking about Brett's part, you might be talking about 5 million total, something like that. You're talking about 77 million overall. I think the last
Right.
number I heard was 32 million. They don't even know what happened to it. It's unaccounted for.
Right. Wow. Yeah,
Uh,
and there's several other celebrities involved, like the $1 Million Man, I think, is in there. Phil Bryant was complicit in several ways. So like, it's definitely it's an interesting case, and there's going to be some more developments for sure. But it
yeah,
just comes back to again that frustration, that like when we're talking about trying to solve a problem, is like some of the most vulnerable people in the country when it comes to median income are dealing with an issue as basic as just having clean water. And we're having people take advantage of a welfare system that is deliberately designed to help those specific people when they can afford
right.
he literally can afford that volleyball stadium by himself. It was like less than a percentage of his entire net worth. Like it's greed in that situation, no matter what, no matter what these numbers come out to at this point. It's just sad that we're at a point where, like, and that video that you had shared of the governor, again, bait and switching the conversation to Jackson State. And it was
I
just
know
like,
he has.
whoa, what are we doing? Like, why can't we have a conversation about this corruption specifically here and then manipulating a system designed to help people? And you're going to talk about something that is legal funding. And so that was particularly annoying to me. So,
Reporter's name's Anna Wolf on Twitter. Somebody
Anna
was at
Wolf, I'll have to check her out. Yeah,
it's
for sure.
WOLFE.
Okay, cool. Is she on TikTok at all?
I don't think so. No, I
No.
haven't.
So so
Probably won't.
I'm really excited for this. If for anybody who's been on TikTok for a few years at this point, there's been different chapters of growth for TikTok, and I think we're hitting this kind of real awesome stage of TikTok where a few months ago, 6 months to a year ago, you saw celebrities really kind of flocking to TikTok, but now we're getting small and large politicians really realizing the value of TikTok as a platform, and I think especially 2023 and 2024, if you really look at it for the last 15, 16 years, the way Obama was really recognized as one of the first politicians that really used Facebook brilliantly. And then
Right.
8 years later, we watched Trump do the same thing with Twitter. And now we're coming up on 2024, another 8 years later, and it almost feels like, that kind of changing of the guards happening again, where this platform is going to play a really big role in how politicians get their word out, get their policy ideas out from small and large. Because, if there's a lot of examples from you have a good 50,000 followers, I think, at this point. There's Ken Russell in Florida, who was both funny and quirky with his content, was able to get up to a good 500,000. And we have a lot of smaller politicians now getting, and candidates, not even full on politicians, getting verified pretty early on. And I think it's a testament to, again, that there's a political community really building around, let's figure out who our best representatives could be and where they're at, because we just need to hear what they're about rather than just, the commercials we're going to see on TV or the basic funding that they're going to get in their campaigns. It's the conversations, I think, that always get context lost a lot of times. And so these conversations are really valuable right now for, I think, people both inside Mississippi or outside the state to understand what's happening and who can solve it. So again, I appreciate you being here and having this conversation.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So again, what other passions do you kind of have when it comes to, your upbringing? One question, if you follow me, one of my other big hashtags, my main hashtag is dream big, act bigger. It's also the book I'm writing. It really comes down to this idea that one, when I was in my 20s and starting my organization, you heard people say dream big, dream big, dream big all the time. And it just became this idea of like, okay, well, everybody really has amazing ideas when they're passionate about something. How do we help people implement them? And so, you know, again, you talk about your profession, kind of you're just, white collar, raising your kids and, trying to figure out how to get by. That brought you into politics. What were some of your passions kind of early on in life, that before you kind of started having to just make a living and do those things that you kind of would like to bring back into your political campaign or into your priorities?
Um, I think one of my biggest one. I'm kind of like you. I've worked on a book. Writing has been a passion of mine for a long time, especially like
Nice.
I would say more like creative writing, instead of. But I was always that kid, even when I was young. The teacher would say, "All right, you got a history essay. The minimum pages is 5 pages." And I'd turn in 47 pages, and he'd be like, "On, I gave you 100. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even read the whole thing." But anyway, um, that's something I've always liked. I've always said if I ever do make it anywhere in politics, I'm going to write my own speeches. I don't want anybody else to write them for me. I'm going to do my
Yeah.
own. I just enjoy writing a lot. Uh, it's funny, but I also like stand up comedy. That's
Nice.
kind of my thing. If you go back further in my TikToks, I've got some comedy in there. It just kind of took a turn, so to speak. But
Yeah.
I
So,
enjoy.
at what point did you decide to actually run for governor? When did you change to Shaun for governor? Did you start TikTok as that, or did you have it a personal account and then move to a political account?
Yeah, I started with a personal and just was like Shaun something with some numbers or something. Um,
Yeah.
it kind of started as really, it kind of just started as a joke. I made a video about the potholes in Jackson. It was called what did I call it? Pothole to Pantry Initiative is what I call it, and it's still on there somewhere. But basically, I said I was going to ride around and plant tomato seeds and okra seeds in every pothole, and basically, whatever. We got the potholes, might as well use them for something good. They're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
That went pretty viral, and just kind of, I felt like there was because all in all, I still like to be an advocate of, even whether I win or don't win or any of that, I still like to be an advocate for people. A lot of people don't know what's going on, and they don't know the extent of things going on. And a lot of people, like you mentioned right at the beginning of the live, a lot of people I think are just frustrated with general and politics. And Mississippi has a fun number. I think it's 103,000 people in Mississippi who are eligible to register to vote that never have registered to vote. So for
Hmm.
me, a lot of this is how can I, even if they don't vote for me, how can I encourage people to get motivated, and go, oh, I'm going to the polling place this afternoon. I want to vote because I know my vote counts. That's what I hear most of. I don't feel like my vote matters, but it does. It
Right.
does. Um, but yes, it kind of started as a joke, and then a lot of it was just my followers. They were like, "No, you should really do it. I'd vote for you," and then it just kind of took off from there. And it's something I do enjoy doing. If I could go back to school, and I might, I've thought about going back to school. I would like to major in political science. I would just
Nice.
like to learn more about you know, how it all works. And I've got a general idea, yes, but you know what I mean. I'd like to really get into
Yeah.
it. So,
Well, on the national conversation, anybody who follows me know that I'm a huge proponent of college for everybody. I think not just forgiving student debt, but the idea of at the end of the day, we have to really decide what kind of society we want to live in. And the
right.
most sustainable, healthy society we can have is making sure we take care of sick people and making sure everybody is educated in a way that they can not just be skilled to fulfill a job, but skilled in a way that they can fulfill a passion that is productive for society, because that's where we really start growing and progressing and we innovate. And so,
Right.
there's so many solutions to these problems. And that's the most frustrating part, I think, for so many people is, technologically as a kid, I was excited because it felt like we were there. We could do this. And, at this point, it's much more of a social uh, battle to really get people on the same page than it is a technological battle to overcome these problems or anything of that sort. So, you know, when it comes to supporting you or any other candidates, or particularly, let's start with the Jackson water issues. Is there any way people outside of the state can help Jackson citizens right now? Is there any particular groups, nonprofits they should look in that you know of that are doing good things that would be best to help or donate to?
There is a group I can't remember. I could make a video about it and tag
Okay.
you in it. There,
Yeah.
there's legit. I think there's one of it's part of a church. That's who I've been using and that's who I've been recommending.
Okay.
They deliver the water to the house to people's houses that need it who are unable to come. Because the
Yeah.
lines for some people were sitting in line. They have like you could only get a maximum of one case of water, but you had to sit in line for like 6 hours to get it, and it was
Yeah.
just yeah, it was kind of a cluster there.
Yeah.
But yes, there are all those things out there. I think the Salvation Army here is doing
Okay.
um, a lot of good things too. But yeah, I could put together. That's a good idea. I could put
Yeah,
together a
and
video.
I'll stitch it or duet it if you want
Yeah,
to tag me in it, and we
right.
can promote some of those groups that are doing some good things in the
Because
local area.
a lot of this is Reeves just announced that the boil water notice was lifted, but I will tell you there's a pending mega lawsuit over lead in the water, and the lead's still in the water. And
Yeah.
even though this boil water notice has been lifted, the Department of Health is still recommending that pregnant women and children don't drink the water and don't bathe in the
Hmm.
water. So it's not, you know, yes, people have water now. I think most part everywhere in Jackson to flush their toilets and all that, but it's still not safe water. I kind of feel like
Right.
if it's not safe for a pregnant lady or a child to drink, then I don't want to drink it either. You know what I mean? I mean
Right.
that, you know. Um, the guy that won the lawsuit in Flint, Michigan, that attorney, he's established an office in Jackson. That's how big the lawsuit is against the
Wow.
city of Jackson. So they have that on them too.
Yeah.
That could be a
Yeah. And
$1 billion lawsuit. It could be whatever. But
yeah, and history shows, once these issues happen to a devastating level in the water systems, don't necessarily trust how fast they know they have to get it back on track. Yes, it's back on track, but it's not clean.
right.
For just about every simple situation we've had of these over the last 50 years includes that water being polluted far worse than we knew when we study back over the next
Well,
10 years.
we're
So,
doing the same. You're right. We're doing the same thing we've always done. We're doing right now. What we've done is put a band-aid on it, but it's not.
yeah,
The wound, so to speak, is still there. But we need to get a long-term solution where you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore.
yeah,
The water plant itself, the one that's causing all the problems, the OB Curtis facility, it's right by the reservoir. Of course, it is. That's where it draws its water, but it's in the flood zone, and that's what caused a lot of those problems.
yeah,
I guess for me, it's hard to believe at this point that there's not some sort of major levee system around that plant, and there's not backup like sump pumps in the ground, so if the water does get in there, they can get it pumped out of there.
right.
There's a lot of issues like that. Um,
Yeah, and we know that these issues are only going to get worse. Droughts are getting worse. Extreme weather
Correct.
is getting worse. Weather, the flood maxes, 100-year floods, we're seeing more and more often at this point. And so you're right. At this point, it's about preparing for things that we know are happening, so we don't have to deal with billion-dollar price tags to fix them, or try and just make sure people have any access to water, much less it being clean water. And
And that's
so,
and I can attest to you. I mean, as a plumbing contractor, like the price of our materials has like quadrupled over the last year. I will tell you, there was a former mayor of Jackson. His name was Tony Yarber. I believe he was mayor in 2011, if I remember right. Anyway, he pitched a massive infrastructure revitalization plan to the state of Mississippi to replace everything, to replace roads, sewer, water lines. The cost of that
right.
plan, do them all at that time, was like $315 million. So that's what I'm saying. That
Wow.
do the same plan now, they're estimating would be about $2 billion or more.
Yep.
And it's not that the materials have changed or they're using different methods. It's just that the prices of everything have changed. So
Yep.
yeah, they could have
Yeah.
easily saved $1.7 billion just by doing it,
Yeah.
in 2000.
Exactly. And that's really the name of the game with sustainability. It's very easy to get stuck on, the initial price tag, but it's not always about what something costs. It's about what you're going to save in the long run if you don't
Correct.
fix a problem. So, but how can people support you? Do you have a website or anything? Obviously, people need to follow you on TikTok. If you're on your side of the live right now, make sure you follow me as well. We'll be having more of these conversations. But do you have a website or where anybody can support you?
I don't have a website yet. It's kind of I'm close to that. We're
Yeah,
kind of going over there's some final changes and stuff, but
yeah,
uh, my profile is my Facebook page. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like I'm most active on TikTok lately. So I mean,
yeah,
if you want the full story, this is where it's gonna be. And somebody
yeah,
asked me a good question the other night on the live. They said, if you do win, are you going to continue to go live? And I said, yes, of course. I mean,
yeah,
that's part of it. So
yeah. Yeah, again, like this is a voice that, I think we're at that point where you won't be the first one that is just an average person hanging out, being genuine and vulnerable about what they think needs to be fixed. And when people start identifying with them, then we're going to see political careers spark out of those conversations. So, yeah,
correct.
kudos to you and congrats for taking that leap. And not everybody would go be that vulnerable and be willing to take the risk, but we need more candidates that are just passionate about trying to fix the problem. So,
And that's what a lot of, but for me, it is that it's not just about me winning or losing. It's about inspiring other people to say, hey, look, this old goofy looking plumber got out here and did it. I can do it. You know what I mean? Because not only do we need better candidates for governors, we need better candidates for city councilmen and
right.
mayors, and it's nothing to be afraid of, and it's not rocket science. I mean, it's really not. So that's kind of it. I believe this is just me, but I believe we're going to see a independent movement, so to speak. I don't know if it'll be in 2023. It might be in 2032 or so, whatever. But I think just me personally, I think people are looking for different options, better
Yeah,
options. Uh,
absolutely.
and I think that I've always been a firm believer the best person to represent normal people is a normal person.
Hmm.
I don't think a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever is ever going to fully, cater to the needs and think about the needs of people who elect them, because they're like, well, I ain't never struggled paying my light bill. I'm not worried about it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
uh, I've never not had safe drinking water. I ain't worried about it.
Hmm.
But
or when you do suddenly not have it, you can get your own personal drinking water truck. So,
Yeah, that was another controversial thing, but I've gotten all I can say on that is there was two statements that I've read that said that that wasn't his water truck, and one was from his office, and the second statement was from Trustmark Bank, but Trustmark Bank is his former employer, so I think that,
interesting. Yeah. Well, it's 9 o'clock Central Time. That was, I think, a good hour conversation. Again, I'm totally down to do this again. We can talk about food access and agriculture runoff, or anything under the sun, but I particularly love sustainability. I love talking about really, at the end of the day, no matter what party or where you think you lay on the political spectrum, we all have to eat, we all drink water, and we all use energy. So we
correct.
really have to figure out how to adequately provide those things for everyone. That's not a partisan issue; it's a human issue. And so these conversations are, I think, are really important, but they're also just really productive for people to kind of see the nuances of opinion and ideas, from average politicians to those that, have ideas that aren't getting implemented.
I agree. I think we lost your audio there.
Make a video kind of different areas. Oh, Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now.
There we go. Yeah. All right. But yeah, thanks again for joining me. Again, if you want to make a video of some of those groups in the local area of Jackson that are kind of
Absolutely.
helping with that crisis, definitely as somebody in the nonprofit world, I want to help promote those groups. Anybody doing that good work. So, anything you want to add? Questions, comments, right here at the end, kind of wrap it up.
No, man. Like I said, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your patience with scheduling. And yeah, definitely interested in doing it again. I'll read up on our agriculture runoff a little more here. It's something I'm, I get the gist of it. I just something I'd like to read more about. And
Yeah, it's different in every state, kind of how it's impacting each area. So it's definitely something kind of, again, with nuance to it. But and as this we kind of continue these candidate conversations, I have several candidates I'm lining up conversations with, but it might be good to get some of the candidates from across state lines where we get 4, 5, 6 of you in here at once and let you all kind of just roundtable your ideas and bounce ideas of some of the obstacles you're facing, both as small candidates, independent candidates, and those sort of things. So lots of ideas I think that we can do, but the biggest idea is to just network and get to hear what everybody's dreams would be if they were in office. Because again, like I think, when it comes back to my mantra, it's all about dreaming big and acting bigger. And there's a lot of people that really have some awesome ideas and are passionate, and we've got to figure out how to get them into office. So,
I agree. That's the trick.
yep. Well, I won't take up too much more of your time. You can have a good rest of the night. Again, enjoy it with
Yes,
your
sir.
family. Everybody on your side of the live, make sure you give me a follow. I'll make sure I send all my followers your way. But have a good rest of the night.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.